The 13th of January 2024. You're welcome back. This is a retirement chat or bedtime chat. I'm just about to roll in after being very busy all day. I'm just going fixing this and fixing that, and other people that are friends of mine with electrical connections broken, or check this out or check this, the other. This is a bedtime chat on fossil fuel. One thing I came across recently: no electrician could find out a leak. The electric kettle was causing a shock, and the bill was going around. The meter was going around for electricity, even when there was nothing on. Turned out someone went mad with a nail gun and drove the nail from the nail gun in between the live and the earth wire. And so the live, occasionally, it depended kind of on the weather. It wasn't just touching it exactly. Was leaking the power out, and it was all being paid for, and it was giving shocks throughout the house, and nobody could spot that. I spotted it straight away, and was able to identify the line where it was in, and let someone come in and fix it or disconnect it and put a separate line in. I'm a great believer if there's a fault somewhere in the wall or in the tractor, bring a totally new line around and cut out the whole thing. Anyway, a commenter there, I mentioned on a video earlier about Mr. Bean, and he made the point that why don't we have good quality resilient cars that would last for a long time. And I absolutely hate the idea and this false notion that if you haven't information technology, if you haven't electronics, if you haven't all kinds of electronic gadgets in your life, on your machines and in your house, in your car, you're nobody. You're nobody. Now, I operate machine tools and all manual, and I admit if you have a lathe there or a milling machine and you want to replicate the same part all the time, if you want to continue to make 65 of those or 365, it's very monotonous to keep it right by hand all the time and do it by hand. And if you overstep the mark or take a little bit too much off, then you have to throw it out. In that kind of context, IT is very good. And in handling finance, generally speaking, IT is all right, so long as it's not the post offices. I've done enough about that. But anyway, I don't really see the point in having all this IT, and the least of it you have, the better. Now, one of the things about IT, of course, if you don't have electricity of some kind, it won't work at all. Now, anyway, about Mr. Bean, this thing about him having a fancy car, a big McLaren, and it's 250,000 or whatever, and therefore that he's not entitled to have an opinion. I don't buy into that at all. If somebody builds up a business and has a concept and makes it work and becomes very rich, what is the problem with that? Why do people resent that so much? If it's genuinely earned, what's the problem? I mean, that's it. If you get in on that, I mean, you pay your taxes and all of that. Why is there always this idea that if you're successful in life, you're not fit to comment on anything? Mr. Bean makes a very valid point, in my opinion, about having cars that will last much longer. Breaking up cars 5 and 6 year old. Go out to the landfill sites and you'll see the best of washing machines and tumble dryers and cookers all thrown out after a year. The minute one little fault happens, they're all dumped instead of repairing that fault. That is madness. That's classic green stupidness. Now, the other thing is, when it comes to Trump, of course, he built up his own businesses, and they say, oh, he's this and he's that. Fact is, he did build up his own businesses. He did build them up, and he was one of the few people who took over from his father who was good at what he did and did it better. Usually sons and daughters do it worse, but he did it better. So, oh, he knows nothing. He's a gumbean. He won't pay his taxes. Everyone knows that if you're in a company, it's the company pays the taxes. The directors are responsible for the payment of the tax and all of that. And there's returns and all kinds of regulations, and they're extremely complex. And to say somebody paid or did not pay their tax without knowing how these work is stupid. But that's the kind of idiocracy we live in. And the media, of course, unless somebody in it from government tells it and are successful, that's okay. But if somebody else criticizes the government and they're successful, they're a wrong one. This is the way it goes. Now, tonight, EirGrid has their dashboard up. It's very calm. It's very cold. It's not below freezing. It's about 3 degrees, maybe around that, maybe 4. But it's very cold. You wouldn't sit in a house. It's cold in a house. And I have my fire in a range here, and then I have the oil fired heating to back that up. And I'll tell you, you need it. I'm after turning it off just so it wouldn't be making noise for the video. But you need it. You need the heat. And this idea that you don't need heat, this is what the Greens are pushing on the people. I remember going to a house one time, a couple, I think they were a newly married couple as far as I remember, and they built a massive house and they couldn't keep it warm. And she was inside looking at the telly and a big rug all around her, a big blanket all around her, and her feet all covered up like this. I couldn't help but think, like, well, you better build a small house and heat it than have this big thing and not being able to heat it. Why do people want such massive big houses? I don't know. But at the moment, anyway, EirGrid are importing 972 megawatts from the UK, and that's all fossil fuel based. This old thing about, oh, we interconnect with somewhere else and then we can use the windmills, that's only an excuse to grace the fingers and the hands and the paws of the wind industry who bails them out and gives them money for their elections. Why voters fall for that, I don't know. There's only at 6 o'clock this evening when there was a demand of 6,000 megawatts. It used to be the maximum demand was 5,000 megawatts. It's 6 now because of the data centers. And at 6 o'clock this evening, the contribution of wind was 210 megawatts, which was absolutely derisory. It would have no impact or nothing. It would just be the voltage going a bit above the potential difference. A ridiculous situation. So wind is given no contribution. Now it looks like we're in for a week ahead. This here is the 13th of January when we're going to have a lot of cold weather, and it may be calm. And if it's calm, we'll have no contribution for wind industry at all, wind energy at all. And let's watch what the dashboard shows during the week. There's a possibility there could be blackouts, but I think the government through Eamon Ryan has managed to install rows and rows of massive big diesel engines in Dublin. I know they had trouble getting them. There was an issue over whether planning permission was needed or what, but in any event, they have installed all these diesel engines which are highly inefficient, and this was what the wind was meant to abate. Now, anyway, on the electric vehicles, I know there's a lot of people support me on that. A lot of people don't. I don't care what people do. I've made a video there to put people aware. There was a second bus went up on fire today in London. Second bus goes on fire. But I think myself we have the EVs beaten. I think we have them beaten. I think despite all the efforts of the government, we have them beaten. And what I think is going to happen is the ban on the making of new petrol and diesel cars will probably be enforced unless it can be stopped. I don't know whether it will or not. There'll be some, but there won't be many. I think other countries, I think China in particular, will spot that this is the new market, and what will happen is all our petrol and diesel cars will be supplied by China. They're already flooding the market with EVs, and as soon as they spot that they're not selling and not going places, they'll move to the other and they'll just change the plant, and we'll have all Chinese cars. I hope they're as good as the German cars, which are good enough, and the Japanese cars too. But I will make the point that the Japanese are winning off the idea altogether. Mazda's not making any. I think they all know the writing's on the wall, and hopefully we get back to making good, old, strong, long-lasting petrol, and particularly the good diesel engine, and get rid of all the beluba nonsense and lights and everything else and dash lights. Get rid of the whole damn thing. They don't make them one bit more efficient. And then we have the houses with no chimneys. Imagine that. No, imagine Ireland houses with no chimneys. They've made Santi obsolete straight away. And if you have no electricity, you see, most of the heating systems won't work. The gas boilers and that won't work. They need electricity. So there could be big problems with that in the future. I think it's bad that you can't have a fire in your house. Now, it's not the law, I was told, it's not the law that you can't put a chimney on a new house. You can. That's not in yet, but it could be coming. But most of the builders think it's a good virtue signalling not to put them on. And I see a lot of them in many places where they're built like that. they put a hole out through the wall and put a chimney up alongside the wall to defeat the whole purpose of the thing. It's madness. It's madness. We need to get these Greens and their fellow travellers into the dustbin of history as fast as we can. Now, there was a report during the week that said solar panels were better than trees for cutting and absorbing emissions. And trees absorb CO2, they absorb carbon dioxide, so they take it out of the air. Now, this idea of solar panels, what they can contribute, obviously they think they can put the electricity into a bag and they work at night and all of this. But imagine saying that solar panels are better than trees. I mean, it's just make more electricity. Now, without blaming the wind industry too much, there is a concept in government that we're not making half enough electricity. So let's say in Ireland this year, in 2023, we make a certain amount of electricity, so many gigawatts hours. Don't ask me. Right. If they got 1,700 million more, that would be a great idea. So in other words, the demand tonight at 6 o'clock was 6,000 megawatts with 1,000 for data centers. If they could get 600 billion or 600 million or 600 billion or 600 with 72 knots after it of electricity production, they would think that was a great thing. They don't have the brains to ask, what are you going to do with it? What do you see going to put it? Oh, we'll export it. We'll export it, and I'm importing it tonight. This is the screwed up thinking that goes on. In any event, they want more and more electricity. So why not have open fires? Why not have fires? You can't beat a fire in the cold weather. It's a lovely thing. This idea that the emissions from it is as bad as baloney, and the smokeless coal in rural areas is another baloney. It's been bought in from the north by the hundreds of thousands of tons and destroying the livelihoods of local coal and fuel merchants. They are selling a kind of a smokeless version and all that, and there'll be ways to cheat and all to that. It works a bit, but I don't see the point in it. But I'm sure there'll be comments on that. Now remember now that the whole idea of the green agenda was to get away from oil. Just stop oil. Just stop oil. There's a big war on in the Red Sea over oil, and in the Persian Gulf over oil. So why are the big powers of the world and the British bombing the Houthis and all of that over oil? It's over oil. 24% of the world's oil comes out through the Persian Gulf. So how come we were told we can do without oil, and then they want to kill all around them and bomb over it? Isn't that proof that the whole thing about oil is a total lie? Just stop oil and the whole votes that they collected are all a lie. Are people badly screwed up? And I'm afraid to tell you that the youngsters going to school are indoctrinated. It'll be an awful job in future. It'll take terrible poverty and utter war to shake them out of this. I hope they'll listen to me when they finally realise all that we're being told at school is mostly lies, and they're not even being educated. And maybe still now, if I live long enough, I'll see the day when somebody will call me into a hall and give a lecture to these kids and put their heads back where they should be and explain to them to ignore everything they were taught. Isn't it a sad day when you have to say that to kids, and some of the parents are even worse? So now, this the thing about oil. Why is there so much concern over oil? Now, I maintain we should have an oil feast day in Ireland. You know the way you have St. Patrick's Day? We should have a day to celebrate oil. Maybe not a feast day, more like Mother's Day or Father's Day. Have it on a Sunday and have it a kind of a day when you go out for a meal. We should celebrate oil. We should pray thanking God for it and pray thanking God for more of it. And that includes coal, oil and gas. Because if this runs out in weather like this, people will die all over. And the hospitals will not be able to keep the fuel in. The guards won't be able to operate without fuel. And the farmers won't be able to produce food. And very soon you'll have hunger. And this is the point. We should be working diplomatically to secure the oil supplies. What's wrong with me producing my beef and other farmers producing lamb and bacon and all that and milk and all that, and importing the oil to do it and run the tractor? I can't understand the point. The Arabs, I was over in Oman, they're not able to produce beef. They can produce the oil, they sell us the oil, and we sell them the beef. And the EU is planning to nail that, that when I send out the beef, they'd put a carbon tax on me, and when I bring in the oil, they put a carbon tax on me as well. But the countries that supply the oil would pay no carbon tax, so you'd have a double taxation. Now, yeah, we could even have a patron saint of fossil fuel, which would be a very good idea. Some saint that was something to do with it. I don't know who we pick. We'll leave that for another day. How did the old people in Ireland manage? How did the old folks manage? They had fires. There was a thing called a funnel fui. It's often uncovered where they're digging up roads and that. They had a place where they put stones into a big fire, and when the stones was hot, they put them into a tub of water and boiled the water and cooked with the water. Imagine the effort that took. They didn't have pots. And I was in Naples, and there's a frying pan in Naples, and it's 3,500 years old. So what were they frying on the pan? What were they using to heat the pan? Well, they didn't have coal, so it's obviously wood and charcoal and dried wood, and they got by on that. And most of the time was taken up with fires and all that, and even many remains like the Iceman that was found in Italy or northern Italy. There, I think it's the Alps anyway. So we're thereabouts. Otzi the Iceman, he was carrying a thing for making fire, and that was 5,300 years ago. He was carrying a thing for making fire. So that tells you, and he had no metal, he had only copper on him. So that tells you that even then fire is important. So what's happening is that government is trying to take possession of the electricity production, cut off your fuel, carbon tax you out of existence, carbon tax industry out of existence, cut off your fuel, but burn it all in the power stations where they have control. And the Greens, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Labour, they think they're going to be in control. They think they're going to be the ones running this shambles with the EU backing for forever. And it just might not work out. There was huge farmer protests in Germany. Right-wing politicians, we'll call them right-wing, who oppose this. We're not right-wing, we're just normal people, are winning elections all over the place. And it could happen that whenever the dream comes true, it'll be the likes of people with the opinion I have that will actually be producing all this. And as soon as that happens, and if that can be done, and if Trump gets elected, and there's a good lot of people say he just might, I think that he could be killed, or I think otherwise they'll rig the election in America to keep him out. If you look at what happened with the software in England that had jailed several postmistresses, it couldn't count. And they're going to come along and count again this time in America with computers, some of them based in Germany. And these computer firms have sued people who criticised them, saying you're taking our good name away, and won their cases. So when a citizen says this computer thing mightn't be right, they sue you. This is what happened with Rudolph Giuliani. So you see the point. I still believe the right thing is the piece of paper, the ballot paper. Why can't they count it? They're so bloody thick. They're thick idiots in America that a lot of them wouldn't be able to count up pieces of paper and notes on a piece of paper. That's the sad fact of it. So they rely on computers, and that of course can be rigged to dump Trump out if the point comes up next time round. And that's what they'll try and do. It mightn't just work. It mightn't just work. I don't know. Who knows? I think he'll win it hands down, but I think that the election will be fixed some way. That'll probably cause the algorithm here to go mad, but we'll just see what happens. I'm not deleting any comments, and we'll see what happens. It's interesting times. Of course, I didn't mention here that amidst all of this, there is this move on by the BRICS countries, by the East, by Europe, and to call it the Global South, to move away from America, Britain, and Europe altogether. I think Europe is going to get a smashing. It may not survive what's coming. I think America, well, it has a lot going for it, but they're trying to hammer it. I think the Russians, the Chinese are clever. I think they'll be able to not get away entirely, but when you see America not paying back its bonds and it madly in debt and everything like that, and Ireland giving them 300 billion euros, more than what we owe. uh, you can see why countries will not want to do deals with them countries. Why would anyone put their money in a bank if you're not going to get it out? You wouldn't do it, you'd pull it out. And that's the way America's kind of gone at the minute. So it's interesting times. The wars and all this are the result of abject ignorance by people who claim to be environmentalists and all of that and Greens, and they're a crowd of idiots. That's the bottom line. Folks, comment underneath surely. I will give me a thumbs up and a thumbs down, whichever you agree with, and we'll see you back for something else. And I'll hit the sack now and have a good night's cuddle go off, as to say in my language. It means sleep sound. Good night. Thank you.